The wound of not feeling enough. It's the invisible root behind the way you love. There's a reason why you keep giving your heart to someone who can't give you anything in return. And that reason has nothing to do with them. It's not about who they are or what they do. It's about you. About something deeper. Something that can't be seen with the naked eye. A wound you haven't dared to face yet. Because when love starts to feel like a battle to be chosen, when you exhaust yourself trying to prove your worth to someone who doesn't see it, when you justify every act of indifference with the desperate hope that maybe one day they'll change, what's speaking in those moments isn't your heart, it's your wound. And that wound has a name, the wound of not feeling enough. This is one of the most invisible emotional wounds, and at the same time, one of the most destructive, because it doesn't scream, it doesn't show, it's not easily recognized, but it shapes everything, every decision you make, every connection you form, and the way you give and receive love. Most women who love from this space don't do it because they lack emotional intelligence. They do it because deep down, way beneath the surface, they are still trying to prove they are worthy of love. That's the root of it all. Because if you believe you have to earn love, you're already starting from a place of lack. Carl Jung said, "What you do not make conscious will manifest as fate." That's exactly what happens when your wound is the one making the choices for you. That wound keeps choosing the same pattern, again and again. Someone emotionally unavailable, closed off, damaged. Someone who can't truly offer you anything real. But they awaken in you the illusion that if they love you, if you can be the one to make them change, then finally you'll have proven that you're enough. But that's the trap. You're trying to heal your self-worth through someone else, and that someone, by definition, is unavailable for love. And that's not a coincidence. It's a mirror of what you're still not giving yourself. This pattern didn't begin with them. It began with your story, with that stage in your life when you first felt that your worth depended on how hard you tried, when you learned you had to be more obedient, more perfect, more quiet, more pleasing, just to be loved. That programming rooted itself deep in your unconscious. And now, without even realizing it, you're repeating the same story, hoping that this time it will be different, that this time the other person will choose you, that this time love will heal what hurt before. But it doesn't work that way. As long as your wound is in the driver's seat, all you will feel is frustration, emptiness, and the constant belief that you're not enough. You give everything. You wait. You hope. And when you don't receive the same in return, you blame yourself. Maybe I was too much. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe I shouldn't have said how I felt. And in doing so, without even noticing, you become your own aggressor. What you don't realize is that this dynamic isn't love. It's a defense mechanism. It's the way your psyche is trying to fix something that was left unresolved years ago. But here's the hard truth. No one is going to come and give you the love you keep denying yourself. No one can fill the space where you have abandoned yourself. And yes, that truth hurts, but it's also the key to your freedom. Because the day you finally understand this, you stop begging for love. You stop justifying someone's absence. You stop chasing after someone who doesn't see you. You begin to realize you don't need to convince anyone that you're worthy. And if someone can't see your worth, that's not your place. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the process of internal integration. That begins the moment you have the courage to look at your wound without filters. When you finally see that your desperation to be loved comes from a part of you that was ignored long before this relationship. And that part of you, that little inner girl, needs you now. She needs your presence, your validation, your love. No one else can give that to her. No one else can love her for you. That is your responsibility. And if you don't take it, you'll keep falling into the same relationships again and again, with different names, different faces, different stories, but always the same pattern. Loving someone who can't give you anything back. So before you keep blaming the other person, ask yourself, from where am I loving? If you're loving from fear, from abandonment, from emptiness, then it's time to stop, to pause, to look at yourself, to listen, to heal. Because you can't keep giving all of yourself to someone who doesn't even know how to receive it. That's not noble. That's emotional sacrifice. And sacrifice does not build love. It only depletes you. This, right here, is the beginning, the root, the core of why you keep choosing people who can't give you anything. But there's something even deeper you need to understand. Why does this lack attract you? Why does that emotional coldness pull you in? Why, even knowing they're not good for you, can't you let them go? Let's explore that next. Because within that question lies the hidden logic of your wound, the reason why you keep repeating what hurts you the most. Why do you keep loving from a place of lack? Why do you feel drawn to people who offer you nothing? There is a quiet kind of pain, subtle, persistent, that becomes a pattern when it's left unhealed. It's a pain that leads you to look in the wrong direction. A pain that convinces you love lives in the place where it hurts the most. A pain that tells you that if someone doesn't choose you, you must be the problem. And that's how the cycle begins. A story that repeats without your awareness. A story where you are constantly drawn to emotionally unavailable people. Cold, distant, detached. People who can't give you anything, yet somehow leave a mark on your soul. And it's not random. It's not bad luck. It's not that you just have terrible taste in partners. It's your wound, speaking, choosing, repeating what feels familiar. Because when you grow up in an environment where love was scarce, where you had to earn affection, a kind word, a gentle look, something inside you begins to associate love with sacrifice, with pain, with fear, with waiting. And without realizing it, that becomes your emotional compass. Your unconscious starts seeking out that same energy in your relationships. If all of this is starting to open your eyes, imagine what's coming next. The final sign is the most revealing of all. Your heart keeps attracting what resembles your past, not to punish you, but to heal what remains unresolved, to close the circle. Carl Jung explained it with striking precision. The unconscious is always striving to complete itself, and one of the ways it tries to do so is through symbolic repetition. Without even realizing it, you search for someone who can make you feel the same way you felt with that figure who once hurt you. But this time, you do it with the unconscious hope that things will be different. And that's exactly where the greatest self-deception begins. You start to believe that you can earn the love of someone who doesn't even have love to give. You find yourself drawn to someone emotionally unavailable, someone ambivalent, someone who gets close one day and then vanishes the next. And instead of walking away, something deep inside you latches on even harder. A voice, old and hidden and painfully familiar, whispers, "If this time I can get them to choose me, then I'm worthy. If I can win the love of someone who resembles the one who once hurt me, then I'll finally feel whole." But that love never comes, and you stay. You wait. You endure. You justify. You convince yourself that you're fighting for something meaningful, when in truth, you're just reliving an old wound. A wound born from lack, from absence, from a time when you had to settle for crumbs and call it love. And because your wound grew in the soil of scarcity, you now feel strangely comfortable in spaces where nothing is given, where there's no reciprocity, where you give everything and all you receive are fragments, moments so small and insignificant, but your mind turns them into castles. A glance, a message, a faint memory, and your imagination fills in the rest. Your heart clings to a promise that was never made, to a possibility that never existed. And the cruelest part is when someone finally comes along, who sees you, who treats you well, who doesn't require you to earn their love, who doesn't make you feel small. You recoil. You feel bored. You feel it's too good to be true. You feel like it's not real. So, you push them away. Why? Because your wound doesn't recognize healthy love. Because for you, loving has always meant struggle, sacrifice, anxiety. And when there's no drama, your system panics. It becomes disoriented. That isn't love. That's emotional trauma, disguised as love. Your body has learned to live on high alert, to anticipate disappointment, to fear abandonment. So paradoxically, you feel more alive in relationships that hurt, because pain has become your comfort zone. That's where the pattern becomes addictive, because every time someone rejects you, it activates that ancient wound, that little girl inside you who was never enough to be embraced, who was never truly seen, who had to work so hard to earn even the tiniest drop of affection. And she's still there, still waiting, still hoping that someone someday will finally say, "I choose you, I love you, I see you." But you keep searching for that recognition in all the wrong places, in people who don't have the capacity to give you what you deserve. And so, the cycle repeats. Love becomes a war you always lose, because the price of that war is your self-worth, your energy, your peace. And there comes a point when you no longer know whether you're fighting for love or just reliving the abandonment. That's when consciousness must enter the scene, because as long as your wound remains hidden in the shadows, it will continue choosing your relationships. It will continue disguising emotional dependence as love, and you'll keep believing that you are the problem, when in reality, the only thing you need is to heal that part of yourself that learned to suffer in order to feel loved. You don't need someone to change. You need to wake up, to see the pattern, to recognize with clarity that love born from lack will never bring you fulfillment, only more emptiness. And the truth is, you deserve something completely different. But in order to receive it, you first have to stop chasing what cannot give you anything. Here's the trap of emotional self-deception, justifying the unjustifiable out of fear of abandonment. There's something that almost no one tells you when it comes to toxic or one-sided relationships. Most people don't stay because they can't leave. They stay because they've built a story to justify the unjustifiable. This is what's called emotional self-deception, and it's one of the most subtle defense mechanisms of the unconscious. It protects you from having to face the pain head-on. When you're with someone who doesn't meet your needs, who makes you feel invisible, confused, used, or not enough, some part of you knows. You feel it. You sense it. But there's another part, the most wounded, the most vulnerable, that starts to tell another story. They're like this because they've suffered too much. I understand them. That's why it doesn't bother me so much. They're just afraid of love. Deep down, I know they love me. They just don't know how to show it. And just like that, without even realizing it, you begin to hold the relationship together more with your imagination than with reality. You start constructing a narrative that transforms abuse into sensitivity, coldness into trauma, indifference into fear of love, instability into emotional depth. And all of that feels noble. It feels loving. It feels like empathy. But it's not. It's fear. There's a fear that many of us carry deep inside, a fear that we barely dare to admit even to ourselves. It's the fear of accepting that someone you love isn't choosing you, that despite all the effort, the care, the sacrifices, and the pieces of yourself you've handed over, none of it is enough to make them stay. That person will not change. Not for you. Not for everything you've given. And maybe, deep down, you already know it. But the fear is not just about them leaving. What truly paralyzes you is the idea of being left alone, with your wounds wide open and your illusions shattered. Because it wasn't just about the person. It was about the story you built around them. That story made you feel like you weren't alone, like everything made sense, like love would eventually fix it all. Losing the illusion, that narrative you clung to so tightly, is what hurts the most. So you fight to keep that illusion alive. You make excuses. You tell yourself they're going through something tough, that they're emotionally distant now, but they'll come around, that their silence doesn't mean indifference, it just means they're tired. You remember the moments when they were sweet and attentive, and you convince yourself that those moments define who they really are. But what you're actually doing is something far more dangerous. You're turning your pain into justification. You're using your empathy as armor to protect yourself from the truth. Because if you looked clearly, if you admitted to yourself that they're using you, that they don't love you the way you love them, that there's no real reciprocity, you'd have to do the unthinkable. You'd have to walk away. You'd have to let go. You'd have to set boundaries. And that, for you, touches the deepest wound, the one that whispers, "You're not enough." The one that says, "If I leave, no one will ever truly love me." The one that makes you believe that maybe you're the problem, that maybe you're asking for too much. So you choose the path that feels safest to your nervous system. Denial. Self-deception. And the thing about self-deception is that it works for a while. It gives you temporary relief. It numbs the ache. Until one day, your body begins to speak louder than your thoughts. The anxiety becomes constant. You can't sleep peacefully. You start to look in the mirror and not recognize the person staring back at you. And then it hits you. Your entire world is orbiting around someone who doesn't even notice your gravity. That realization shatters your soul, not just because of what the relationship has become, but because you realize you betrayed yourself. You silenced your instincts. You made yourself small to be loved. You mistook endurance for love. You became an expert at forgiving someone who never even apologized, all because you were terrified of being alone. But that fear, that terror of abandonment, isn't new. It didn't begin with this relationship. That fear was planted long ago, in the earliest chapters of your life. In those moments when you needed love, but it wasn't given. When you felt unseen, and you blamed yourself. When you learned to be the understanding one, the good one, the one who doesn't complain, the one who waits, who adjusts, who doesn't ask for too much. And now, you're repeating the same story. That unhealed wound is still there, whispering to you that if you're just more patient, more empathetic, more loving, maybe then they'll change. Maybe then they'll see your worth. But here's the truth. They won't. Not because you're unworthy of love, but because when you love from your wounds, you choose from your need, not from your self-worth. The people you attract aren't there to heal you. They're there to reflect what still needs healing within you. And that's why the pattern repeats. Even when the faces change, the pain feels the same. The same emptiness when they don't reply. The same hope when they show a flicker of affection. And you hold on for months, sometimes years, even decades, clinging to the fantasy you created, hoping it might finally become real. But it never does, because it was never love. It was a reflection of your fear. The most courageous thing you can do is not to wait. The real bravery lies in facing the pain, in admitting that you lied to yourself, that you justified what was unjustifiable, because you didn't know how to live without the illusion. But that's where transformation begins, when you stop lying to yourself, when you choose to see reality, even if it hurts, when you take the side of your dignity, not your desperation. It's not easy, but it's necessary, because no real change can happen without a dose of brutal honesty. And sometimes, the hardest truth is the one that sets you free. Many people silently ask themselves the same question after a painful breakup, or after falling back into a relationship that drained them. How could this happen again? And what hurts the most is not just the pain itself. It's realizing that despite all the promises you made to yourself, you repeated the same pattern. Again. That's not a coincidence. It's an unconscious mechanism, a pattern rooted so deeply inside you that it cannot be undone by willpower alone. Carl Jung said it best. What you do not make conscious will manifest as fate. That's exactly what happens with unhealed emotional wounds. They don't stay quiet. They don't fade away with time. They manifest. They disguise themselves. They show up in your relationships, in the way you love, in the way you attach, in the way you sacrifice, until you face them, acknowledge them, embrace them, and begin to transform them. When a wound is born in childhood, abandonment, rejection, betrayal, humiliation, lack of love, it leaves a permanent imprint on your emotional blueprint. It becomes an internal map, and from that moment on, you begin to repeat the pattern, not because you want to suffer, but because your soul is trying to close a story that was left unfinished. And where does it search for closure? In your relationships. Because intimate relationships are the perfect stage where your unconscious can reenact the unresolved pain. It's in the places where you care the most, where you feel most vulnerable, where you give the most, that your deepest traumas are triggered. That's why sometimes you fall in love with a dizzying intensity. You feel like you've found your soulmate, your missing piece, someone from another lifetime. But in reality, what's happening is not destiny. It's recognition, unconscious recognition. Your wound recognizes their energy, not from light, but from pain. Your body says, "This feels like the abandonment I once knew." And instead of fleeing, you stay. Because part of you believes this time you can fix it, that this time you can rewrite the ending. But you can't, because that person isn't there to heal you. They're there to reflect what you still need to heal within yourself. And until you understand this, you will keep repeating the same trauma over and over, changing faces, but never changing the wound. Trauma has a quiet way of pulling you back into what's familiar, even if what's familiar is destroying you. It makes you believe that something new is dangerous, that something healthy is boring, that something peaceful isn't real, because your body only knows how to survive in chaos. And when peace finally comes, you don't know what to do with it. your nervous system panics, your heart feels empty. That's the hidden effect of unhealed emotional trauma. It silently ties you to the pain you're familiar with and distances you from the very experiences that could actually heal you. And as long as you're not aware of it, your wound will continue to recreate the same kind of situations that once hurt you the most. The worst part is, it'll do it with your full consent. You'll be the one justifying it, defending it, holding on to it, not because you want more pain, but because you've confused that pain with love. If you grew up believing that love had to be earned, that you had to fight for it, wait for it, prove yourself worthy of it, then when someone offers you genuine, unconditional love, you can't accept it. It doesn't fit your inner map. It terrifies you. So, once again, you find yourself drawn to the one who's unavailable, to the one who doesn't choose you, to the one who makes you feel like you're not enough. Not because you're foolish, but because your trauma is still in control. And that trauma, it doesn't calm down just because someone else loves you more. It doesn't get smaller with affection alone. It only starts to heal through awareness, when you find the courage to look back with a different set of eyes. When you finally realize that the little girl who was abandoned, who thought she had to be perfect to be loved, is still waiting, still hoping someone will come and say, "I see you. You are enough. You don't have to keep fighting." But no one can truly give her that. No one, except you. As long as you're searching outside for a healing that can only come from within, you'll keep falling into the same emotional trap. Because relationships don't heal wounds. They reveal them. They expose what you haven't yet integrated. And yes, that hurts. But it's also a gift. Because every time the same pain repeats, you're being offered a choice to sink deeper into the wound, or to walk through that pain toward real healing. Repetition isn't your punishment. It's your mirror. And when you finally learn to look at that reflection without judgment, without shame, with complete honesty, the cycle begins to break. Not suddenly, not overnight, but it does begin to break. It starts when you stop chasing what keeps hurting you, when you choose to stop defending the indefensible, when you set boundaries, not out of pride, but from deep self-love, when you decide to walk away, not because you've stopped feeling, but because you refuse to keep bleeding for someone who doesn't know how to hold your heart. That's the beginning of true awakening, because a woman who has faced her wounds with compassion no longer stays where love isn't mutual. She no longer accepts emotional crumbs. She no longer convinces herself that almost love is enough. A woman who has stood in the mirror of her relationships and made the decision to heal. She no longer repeats her trauma. She transforms it. She alchemizes it into wisdom. And from that place, she begins to love in a new way, not from scarcity, but from awareness, from wholeness, healing the wound, choosing differently. That is the awakening that changes everything. There comes a moment in every woman's life, a woman who's loved from her wounds, when something inside her shatters. But this time, it doesn't break the way it used to. This time, it's not a fall into darkness. It's a crack that lets in the light. It's a rupture that doesn't destroy her, but opens her eyes, opens her soul, opens her truth. And in that moment, even through the pain, even through the tears, even in fear, there is a part of her that can never fall back asleep. That moment arrives when you can no longer carry the emotional lie that kept you trapped. When you just can't keep making excuses for what is clearly not love. When you become profoundly tired of chasing what never truly chose you. And even if your heart still feels something, you choose to walk away. Even if it aches, you choose to let go. Even if your whole body trembles, you choose yourself. That is the real act of awakening. And no one can do it for you. Healing a wound is not some magical event. It's not a straight path. It's not waking up one day with everything perfectly fixed. Healing is deeper than that, messier than that. It's real. It's raw. It's sitting with yourself and saying, yes, I was that little girl who didn't feel good enough. Yes, I learned to love from sacrifice, from waiting, from fear. Yes, I betrayed myself again and again, just to avoid losing others. But it's also looking at yourself with deep compassion, and then adding the one thing that changes everything. No more, because there comes a point where pain is no longer a valid excuse, and instead becomes the fuel. The fuel not to justify what you've allowed, but to start building the life and love you truly deserve. That is healing. It's no longer repeating from the wound. It's beginning to choose from consciousness. Carl Jung spoke of the process of individuation as the sacred journey through which the soul meets itself. It is a path of inner awakening where you begin to stop living for others, no longer shaped by expectations, masks, or roles you've learned to play. It's the moment you choose to no longer abandon yourself for the sake of fitting in or being accepted. Individuation is the courageous act of integrating your shadow, your wounds, your past, not to bury them or hide them away, but to understand them fully. And through understanding, you stop projecting them onto the world. You stop making choices from a place of emptiness, pain, or fear. Suddenly, you no longer seek validation from others. You no longer feel the urge to prove your worth through someone else's love. Because finally, something clicks deep inside. Something no one ever taught you when you needed it most. You are enough. And this isn't just a nice quote or a comforting phrase. It's a truth that becomes etched into your being when you finally decide to do the inner work. When you face the pain you spent a lifetime avoiding. When you stop running, stop begging, stop chasing, and instead start walking, step by step, back to yourself, back home. This journey isn't smooth or perfect. There will be setbacks, days of doubt, moments when you miss even the things that once hurt you. Because that's how the emotional system works. It circles back to what it knows, even if it's toxic, even if it's painful. But now, you're different. You see the pattern. You've reached the bottom, and while it felt like the end, it was really the beginning. The dark doorway that led you to your true worth. When a woman finally looks at herself with radical honesty, something shifts. She no longer bargains with her dignity. She no longer pours energy into places where there's no reciprocity. She stops begging for love from people who only know how to offer indifference. And that changes everything. You begin to feel peace in your own solitude, a peace more profound than the noise of being in bad company. You begin to enjoy your own silence, your own body, your own choices. You start to love not from a place of lack or desperation, but from wholeness. You choose from awareness, not from wounds. And when love arrives, it no longer makes you question yourself. It doesn't make you chase it. It doesn't confuse you or make you feel small. Real love does not drain you. It doesn't make you feel like you have to fight every day just to be seen. Real love sees you, even in your silence. It protects you, even without you asking. It chooses you, not through empty promises, but through meaningful actions. And most importantly, real love never tries to fill your inner void. Instead, it simply walks beside you while you fill it from within. That's what happens when you start choosing differently. Not because fear disappeared, not because you stopped loving, but because you finally chose yourself first. Because you realized, perhaps for the first time, that the most important love isn't the one you receive, but the one you stop denying yourself. And that truth changes everything. Healing your wound means you stop chasing love. You start becoming it. You made it this far in life because deep down, you already knew it. Some part of you didn't want to keep reliving the same pain with different faces. And now, it's clear. Your story doesn't end where you were broken. It truly begins the moment you choose to stop perpetuating the same pain with each decision you make. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Healing means facing it with open eyes and an open heart, and choosing not to abandon yourself anymore just to keep someone else. A woman who chooses healing doesn't become cold or closed off or untrusting. She becomes aware, and that awareness makes her free. Free to stop begging for love. Free to stop carrying what was never hers to hold. Free to finally say, I did not come into this life to beg for what I deserve to receive in fullness. Carl Jung believed that the soul has an instinct toward wholeness, and that wholeness can never be reached by waiting for others to complete you. It comes when you choose to complete yourself from within. Today, you are ready to let go of the patterns, to release the trauma, to shed the version of you that believed she had to be chosen in order to matter. Today marks a new beginning, one that doesn't come from fear, but from truth. If you feel this in your heart, write it in the comments. I no longer chase love. I am love. And from that place, I choose differently. Because this is the woman I'm becoming. This is the woman I'm finally allowing myself to be. If you've made it this far, it's because you're ready to transform your life. But this is only the beginning. Watch the next video. It will leave you speechless and take you even deeper into this journey of transformation. Click now, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you never miss the content that could change the way you see everything. I'll see you in the next one.